Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, you know we're covering all the home teams. The New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, also the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll touch on Southland, just a little mention about what those guys are doing down there. And my guest tonight, one of the best we have. Sean Bazan of Fox 8 Sports joins us on the program. Sean, how you doing?
Man, I am doing great. We are all in on this this part of the year where LSU, Saints, you mentioned Southland. It has been a fun year. Tulane as well, fun year when it comes to college football and just football in general here in Southeast Louisiana. The prep state title games are coming up for the private schools. The public schools are next week, so always a fun time of year.
Yeah, it is. And kind of anticipated, right? I mean, we really kind of thought it was going to be this way when the season started.
No doubt, and we all kind of felt like there was a chance for this, and if it didn't end up like this for at least some of the schools, it would have been a disappointment. But Saints are doing what we thought they were going to do. LSU's doing, probably surpassed. I think we're all 10-2, 11-1, to be 12-0, and really looking like they're a force to be reckoned with. And then Tulane, although they kind of limped to the finish line, still played well. And, of course, Nichols and Southeast are two great victories in the first round of their playoffs. So, and don't forget about ULL. Right. 10-win season, a very quiet 10-win really season playing for the conference championship. Yep. So it really has been a great year.
Yeah, it has. Let's start with the Saints. You were in Atlanta. Saints 26-18 over Atlanta. They're now 10-2, NFC South champs, number one seed in the NFC. The thing that really kind of struck me is, and it was a stat that was thrown out this week, LSU has scored 40 points or more against every opponent except Auburn. This Saints offense has not scored 40 points at all this season.
Yeah, look, obviously there's a reason. Look, Breeze was out for 5 games. They've flirted with over 30 a couple of times. Never got to 40 yet. I know it's a little bit unheard of with this Saints offense. I wish I had an answer for it.
Do you anticipate a change here? I mean, now that Breeze is back in the he's been under center for a while. I think it's a little. When I heard it and I went and looked at the scores, I was like, that's true. I mean, and it's unexpected.
I don't anticipate a change. I really don't. I mean, what else do you really have? I mean, you have the players that you have. I mean, you're constantly looking. But I mean, if anybody's available right now, it's probably not for a good reason. Right. So, no, I don't expect a major change. I expect, whether it's coaching, whether it's execution, whether it's mistakes, whatever the case may be, they have to play better. There's kind of that theory out there about the big play. Where's it been? I don't know that I completely buy that, because I can just visualize in my head over the last 2 games in particular, there have been 3 or 4, maybe even 5 big-time shots that they have taken that should have been big plays that did not connect. A couple drops, a couple missed throws, a couple penalties. So Drew Brees said, we were in the locker room with him yesterday, he said, here's the way I look at it. We're 10-2, and we haven't played our best offensive game. We're in a good spot. Yeah. So I kind of lean to kind of trust him in that, because how many years have you and I sat here and said, if they only had a defense? Well, defense has been incredible. Yes, it has. Offense has been a little more efficient than explosive, but nonetheless, here we are at 10-2, 1 seed. This is first world problem we're talking about.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. Against Atlanta, the Breeze seemed to get the ball up much quicker. I heard a stat about 2.5 seconds. He was rolling away from that makeshift left side of the offensive line. But again, issues continue to crop up. I counted 4 missed drop passes. I know there was one with Michael Thomas where they called it a pass defense, but it got through and it hit his shoulder. Something he should have
normally catches.
No doubt about it. You look at the penalties for this team, which again 9 for 120 against Atlanta. That was coming off of 12 accepted penalties for 123 yards against Carolina. 5 of those penalties went for first downs. I read a stat coming off, I believe, off one of your shows. 4 weeks. Over the last 4 weeks, 40 penalties, 389 yards lost. I mean, that will get you beat.
It got them beat once to a lesser team in the Atlanta Falcons right after the bye week. It has not been enough to get them beat the next 3 weeks, but it will get you beat. There's no doubt about it. You get 10 penalties against San Francisco, you're losing that game.
I agree.
One of a few factors that can get you beat, but not just San Francisco. A team like Tennessee kind of makes me nervous a little bit in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Indianapolis as well on Monday Night Football next week. So that cannot continue. They know that. It's uncharacteristic of a Sean Payton team and uncharacteristic of this locker room, because this is a business-like locker room, a very deliberate tone, no wasted motion. They get in, they get their work done, they move on to the next challenge. So, we were talking on the show with Deuce and Juan was like, well, why hasn't Sean Payton benched anybody, or can he bench anybody at this point? And Deuce was like, well, maybe they can, or maybe get him out in certain situations. I would be perfectly fine if it persists, this problem.
Yes.
You've got a veteran team, they've got thick skin. If Sean Payton starts calling some people out in press conferences, hey, these so-and-so XYZ has to play better, because that's unacceptable, especially for the way that this is not a bunch of kids.
No, it's not.
This is a veteran locker room that's played a lot of very good football, won a lot of big games. They know what's at stake.
Yep.
You can't have these penalties.
No, you can't. And look, I agree with you. They play this way against San Francisco. They're sloppy. They're dropping footballs. They're missing assignments. They're having penalties. They're going to get beat.
No doubt.
I mean, this is a quality team that's coming into the Dome on Sunday. Also, the running game. When Breeze was out, Murray was getting the lion's share of the carries, obviously, because there was an injury with Kamara. It became a very physical running team. They've gotten away from that. I understand Kamara needs his touches, look, I think he needs 20 touches a game. I think the stats bear out he needs 20 touches a game. But again, without having that true number 2 receiver, I was talking a little bit about it on the radio show today, I could see Kamara and envision him being more involved in the passing game than trying to be able to force feed him up the middle. That's another thing. You're not seeing a lot of the plays that Kamara has really flourished on, where you get him out in space when you're running, trying to run him almost like Murray. I'm hoping to see a set or a few sets where Murray's in the backfield and Kamara's coming out of that backfield, again, like Bush used to do, dictating where that linebacker, where that safety has to be, because you have to be able to know where Kamara is, and then running the ball physically against the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, especially given what happened last week in Baltimore, that physical running attack, very unique physical running attack that they employ. One of the few teams in the, in the league that had that physical of attack. But I think it's a little bit on Sean Payton, because back-to-back games here, they've only had 18 rushes in each game, and they've led the entire game. And Sean Payton is the first one to call himself out for lack of when he makes a mistake in play calling. So I think if he's really being honest with himself, he can probably get those numbers up, because I'm here to say, this is just one of my keys to the game. If they don't get at least 20 carries, they're losing. If they only run the ball 18 times in this game, that means they have not controlled the line of scrimmage.
Right.
And it's just not a game where Drew Brees can throw the ball 45 times and expect to win. I think back to the Atlanta loss. I believe it was 11 rushes that game. And it was a one-score game for most of that game. So that's 3 out of the last 4 where the rushing numbers are down. So I think if they're self-scouting, and I think they have, it's that time of year.
Yeah.
I think they can. There's more opportunities, and don't discount the injury to Zach Line.
I agree.
Okay, Deuce brought this up for that power running game, especially with a guy like Latavius Murray, and Deuce would know, because Deuce is a guy that is built like Latavius. 6'2", 6'3", tall, bigger guy. Deuce always loved having a fullback to lead him, kind of clean up the messes. He used to tell me. Latavius is kind of built like that. So don't discount the injury to Zach Line here, but still, you have to make the effort, especially if you're up in games or if it's a close game, you can't just throw that aspect of your offense out the window.
Right. Line expected to be back this week. Armstead expected to be back this week.
Limited participant today.
Both still, but would you anticipate both back?
I don't know. Some of my colleague Jeff Duncan, who works with us at Fox 8, seems to think he's going to be back. I know Deuce is leaning on the side that he's going to be back. Is Teron Armstead? We just don't know.
How effective can he be again against this pass rush?
Well, that's my thing. If he can't be effective, you got to pull him.
Right.
You can't play because it's too good of a defensive line for him to be 75%.
Oh, no doubt.
He's got to be at least 90 or 85 in my opinion. So if he's ready to go and can beat Teron Armstead, let him go. But if he's not Teron Armstead, I don't want to hit an injury excuse because if he's not ready to go, don't play him.
Right.
So if he's back, ready to go, play him. If he can't be Teron Armstead, I say hold him out.
Let's talk a little bit about Jared Cook. I mean, again, look, coming in, everybody anticipated a lot of great things for him, especially the training camp that he had. Injured, dropping 2 passes last week, dropped a touchdown at one point. He's got to be more consistent with his hands. He's got to be a bigger part of this offense, especially not having that true number 2 receiver. Look, you can bring Kamara out and allow him to get into the passing game. Traquan Smith is back, and you hope that, again, he's going to continue to evolve. We know what he does in terms of his blocking skill, but he's got to be a factor in these games down the stretch.
Yeah, he is, and I actually think he's heating up. Even the game, was it Tampa? We only had 2 catches, but there were 2 big catches where he had the slant over the middle and he had the deep ball. And then obviously he had the game against Carolina. And last week, the 3 catches that he did have were huge.
Yes.
Huge catches. He dropped the touchdown. Breeze went right back to him. Then he went back to him again. He dropped it again. That's tough. Got to be more consistent. But I do think he's a player that Breeze, even with the drops, trusts because he would not have gone right back to him. And I still think he's going to be a big-time player here down the stretch. That's why I have not completely given up on this offense or this lack of a second receiver because I think Cook is emerging. I think Kamara will eventually get back to Kamara, and Michael Thomas is always going to be Michael Thomas. So despite how they've had to kind of trudge along a little bit here, or kind of plod their way through, I still think bigger plays and a more explosive offense is on the horizon.
Well, we've been look at most of the when you look at the history of the Saints under Peyton, you rarely could be critical of this offense. We could be a little critical with this offense right now. When you start talking about the defensive side of the ball, you're talking about a dominant performance from this defense. 9 sacks, 13 hits again on the quarterback against Atlanta. Jordan had 4 sacks. That's a career high. He is second in the league now to Shaq Barrett. He has 13.5. Barrett has 14.5. Defense created 3 turnovers against the Falcons, held them to 89 yards rushing. That's winning football.
You're going to win a lot of games with 9 sacks and 3 takeaways. Just stop there.
Yep.
It's just going to happen. They dominated, and they took away one aspect of their game, that run game, and it was just get after Matt Ryan and get after him all night, and that's exactly what they did. Had it not been for some fluky onside kicks, which I'm sure you want to ask me about later, that game would have been much more of a dominant victory. Had the Saints finished some drives they should have finished with touchdowns, that would have been a much more dominant victory. I think defensively, they're playing as good as they've ever played under Sean Payton because now it's kind of coming together. Remember earlier you were asking me, where's the takeaways? Well, they come in bunches. Guess what? That was 3, and I had a feeling that was coming. So now they're playing 09 style with the takeaways, and then now with the dominance. So you got down-to-down dominance mixed with takeaways. Look, that's going to win you a lot of football games regardless of the lack of a second wide receiver. By the way, and just to kind of just a stat that because I kind of did a study when Breeze has been back, the passing game. There's still a top 5 passing offense when Breeze is back. His passing yards per game. So it's not like I know it doesn't feel the same,
it doesn't.
But the numbers are still there within this offense. But defensively, this is the best group that frankly Sean Payton has ever had, and I just feel like this is probably the last year you're going to have Dennis Allen because I think the secret's out on him. Yeah,
I would agree. I think I think teams will start to look at Dennis Allen as a head coach once again. A little bit different setup at linebacker. We saw it at the end of the Atlanta game. All of a sudden, I look up and I'm like, wait a minute, Anthony's in the game. Wait a minute, Robertson's in the game, and they were flanking Davis. That looks like your starting linebacking core for this week with Alonzo out and also Klein out.
Yeah, they wouldn't sign Manti Te'o if they didn't fear, but one or both of those guys are going to be out. So looks like it's going to be Robertson, who started in this defense before, and who's really been a team player when you talk about he was a starter and willingly took on the special teams role.
Yes.
And he signed a couple one-year deals, and he's been back. Really good special teams player. We had a sit-down with him last week on the pregame show. Really good guy. Really dynamic guy to talk to. So, excuse me, there's a trust factor there. Stephon Anthony, I think he's okay as a strong side linebacker in a pinch. And this is a team that plays play with a fullback a lot, so you're going to be in base defense a lot. So you may see him on the field quite a bit. Manti Te'o definitely knows this defense. So if he can get himself back into football shape quickly, perhaps he contributes. But look, man, it's the NFL. Everybody's got to deal with injuries, and the Saints are dealing with them right now at one position.
Anthony's first time around here in New Orleans before he was traded to the Miami Dolphins, one of the problems was never, again, his physicality or, again, his athleticism. That's off the charts. It was, again, understanding what his role was, what his assignment was. Hopefully he's in a better situation this time around.
Look, if you really ask around and talk to the people that were here when he was, around the first time, he struggled with pre-snap recognition, where the entire defense is reading a key and he's adjusting to a key that's not there, and it just, there are so many times where he's moving the front, and the running play is coming right where the vacant space, right where he moved them to. So he struggled with that. Kind of been humbled a little bit. I think he's a guy who can play special teams. I think he's a guy I think he's okay in a strong side linebacker role, being run support, and I don't know how much you trust him in coverage, but you're going to count on him to contribute here. So away they go, because he's all they have at this point.
Well, this San Francisco defense is really scary. I was talking about this today on the radio show, much like you did against Atlanta, where you were able to, kind of mask the deficiency of the injuries on the left side of the offensive line. You can't do that this week.
No.
With Bosa and Ford and Thomas and Armstead on the outside, Buckner and Jones on the inside. I think they have, multiple players that have 6 sacks this season. I think it's 5 players along that line have 6 sacks this year. They have been a dynamic defense. It starts up front for them.
They don't blitz. They really don't.
No, they don't. They come right at you. Talk a little bit about it.
Well, it's a fearsome defense. It's fierce. Drew Brees said it's a stout group. It's deep. They didn't even have D Ford last week. I think he's back this week, if I'm not mistaken. You got Armstead, you got Buckner, you got Bosa. So, it is a stout group. And it's really nothing fancy. They play a lot of zone on the back end, a little bit of that cover 3 that Richard Sherman was used to when he was in Seattle. Active linebackers. Do think they're a little bit vulnerable where if it comes to the passing, because the number 1 pass defense in the NFL, between the hashes with the tight end, just watch for that, because Baltimore that was the only part of the passing game they had success with. Between the hashes with the tight ends. And Baltimore tight end you to death. That's just what they do. But this is a fierce defense that you have to run the ball against them, because A, that's the only vulnerability when you look at their stats, and B, you've got to maintain the line of scrimmage. And if they successfully eliminate that part of your offense, then it's open season on Drew Brees. And if they're controlling the line of scrimmage, I just think they're going to dictate the flow of Sean Payton's play calling.
I keep hearing a lot about Taysom Hill this week, getting snaps at the quarterback position, emulating what Lamar Jackson did last week, where they had so much success. What's your take?
I still think it's going to be a Swiss Army knife role. I still think he's going to get his quarterback snaps. Yeah, that QB power he ran last week was brilliant. It was a brilliant call, brilliant execution, and it really was a brilliant design. If you talk about Sean Payton motioning out Alvin Kamara, which had Deion Jones and the safety all tripped up. But no, Taysom Hill's value is his versatility and diversity of his skill set. So if you look at the first touchdown he scored, that's the exact running play that Alvin Kamara ran. The play before, it just looked a little bit different. It was the toss crack play. They ran a little push.
Yes.
And they pulled the tackle and they cracked down with the wide receiver. So it's his diverse skill set combined with Sean Payton's ability to disguise and camouflage a play. So I do think you'll see some of Taysom Hill at quarterback. I don't think it's going to be 25 snaps at quarterback, because you don't want to take the game out of Drew Brees' hand.
Right.
But I do think 20 snaps, maybe 6 or 7 at quarterback, and then the Swiss Army roll, slot, H-back, F, running back, whatever the case may be. 7 is playing a lot this game.
I would agree. You touched on it, the onside kicks, really 3. Again, 2 were going the books. That was an offsides penalty against Russell Gage, former Tiger wide receiver. He wasn't offsides.
No.
Okay, it should have been 3. Peyton promised to get that cleaned up. Look, up until then, the special teams have played really good football.
Yeah, I mean, excellent football. And I've been trying to put that into context because it's such an outlier. It's such a fluky thing.
Right.
Even bad special teams don't hit 3 in a row. And the only thing I can think of is
Cool.
probably had a few guys on there you probably shouldn't have. Probably
Right.
need to redo the hands team a little bit. Execution was just weird.
Right.
And then it looked like a couple guys just didn't know what to do when the ball got close to them. It was like, and these are guys that know what to do with the ball in their
right,
hands.
exactly.
And it just looked like a
Some-
team
like
that hadn't dealt with onside kicks a lot, even though they dealt with it in Chicago. And
Right.
it was like, oh my gosh, it's right there. Oh, what do I do? It was just a complete breakdown that I don't see that happening again this season.
And I found it interesting. On television, they were showing Koo, the video of him kicking the football and being very acrobatic about it.
Two great kicks. I mean,
There's no doubt. And look, to me, I thought the type of spin, everything he put on the ball, it was perfect. But I hope it caught the attention of the special teams because up until then, they really have played well this year.
Very well. Early in the game, they had a block
Right.
punt. Well, Lutz had
Right.
field goals. I mean, Taysom Hill with the block punt, an incredible block punt.
And of
It wasn't
course,
supposed to
you
happen,
got
by the way.
Peyton saying that Harris is the best returner in the game right now.
So, I mean, all that adds up to very, very, very good special teams, but they kind of got caught a little bit. And the kick was, I know Deuce was telling me the kick was a little more inside than you normally see. Most of the onside kicks are more towards the sideline. And that 54, I forgot his name, he was able to run free and basically beat the Saints to the ball.
Yeah.
Look, I can promise you this, there is no way, every single time they were at practice this week, they practice onside kicks. There's no doubt about it. And I wouldn't be shocked if there was a few changes in personnel to the hands team.
Especially guys that are not afraid to catch the football, that's for sure. On offense, they run the football. Breida, also Coleman, Januzak, the fullback. They got a solid receiving core. Emmanuel Sanders was rumored to come to the Saints. There's no doubt the San Francisco 49ers overpaid for him. I've gotten the question over and over this week, how come the Saints didn't go after Sanders? They did. They didn't have the draft capital to be able to match what the 49ers were putting up, and then they ended up with Sanders. But the guy that they go to is the tight end Kittle.
I'm going to be honest with you. In 2017, my last mock draft was the best mock draft I ever did. I had Alvin Kamara successfully and Marcus Williams successfully. My 5th round pick that year was George Kittle. There was not a player that the Saints did not get that I wanted them to get so badly than George Kittle. His Iowa tape, I loved it. It was phenomenal. And to see him have the success he has at San Francisco, it was no surprise to me that he is an all-around tight end. And then when you're defending this offense, 3 words: stop the run.
Yes.
Set the edge.
Yes.
Because it's the outside zone. It's Mike Shanahan's offense passed on to Kyle Shanahan. The zone blocking. They love to get to the edge. And when you have a tight end that can seal the edge, there's no 49ers. We just talked about their defensive line. I mean, it's no slouch. I mean, the Ravens' defensive line. Excuse me, no slouch. And they were able to set the edge and get to the corner so much. You better set the edge, or it could be a long day. They run bootleg action off of it. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is not great. I do think he's good. I get a little bit of a Teddy Bridgewater vibe from him. A guy that can make a few passes here and there. Not going to take over an offense, but a nice complementary piece to an offense. So they're just clean in a lot of different areas. Sean Payton called them a very balanced team. I would agree. There's no real weakness on this team, especially offensively.
And there's no surprises with these coaches either, right? Shanahan, he's years at Atlanta. He knows the Saints know him.
How's Atlanta been since he left?
Right, no doubt.
I mean, Matt Ryan was an MVP when he left, before he left.
Yes.
And what's he now? So he's a great offensive play caller, short of that 4th and 1 call. But I think he is one of the best young head coaches in the game, a very young, a very established but young play caller. And there's no secrets. You know what he's going to do. The system is the system. I mean, for years with Mike Shanahan, you could plug any running back in.
Right.
The system,
over and over again.
System worked. And usually you want to cater your talent to the system. But with Mike Shanahan or Kyle Shanahan, it is the system. And you got to be able to guard that outside zone stretch play because it is coming.
What do you think happens Sunday?
Been going back and forth with this one because I think it's going to be really, really, really tight. I'm going with the Saints. I think they're battle tested. And Jeff Duncan last night on our show made a great point because I can't recall a big game like this at home that they've lost.
Well, the crowd has
so much
so
was
much
on
to
the
do with
line. And I started to think about it. I'm like, other than the NFC Championship game, which we all know how that ended, I can't think of one where I mean, think of the Rams game last year, the Eagles game last year, a few before that, a couple years before that. There was big games towards the end of the season. So I got to go with the Saints. I'm thinking it's going to be not a high-scoring game, but not an incredibly low-scoring game, probably somewhere in the 20s. I'm going 27-24 Saints.
All right, we're going to take a break. We come back. We'll hear from our underwriters. We'll talk a little bit about LSU. We'll get into Tulane, what's going on with Willie Fritz as well. We'll get into the Pelicans. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Sean Mazzetta of Fox 8 Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Stick around.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Sean Mazzetta of Fox 8 Sports is our guest. LSU, big winner over A&M, 50-7. They are the SEC West champs, as we know. Number 2 in the college football poll, number 1 in the AP in the coaches poll. They avenged last year's 74-72 overtime loss to A&M, and they did it big, 50-7. One thing I think we got to talk about today, starting off, is the defense. 169 yards allowed, 3 turnovers. They really stepped up, but they've stepped up, Sean, all season long when they've had to. You know, I talked about this week. They stepped up against Florida. They stepped up against Auburn, and even Bama and T-Town, even though the score doesn't indicate it. So what I'm wondering is, when it comes to playing at a high level, when they've got to do it, can they do it? And I think what it takes that to get them motivated, because the offense is playing so well.
Look, it looked like the Saints' offense.
Right.
They've been such a mainstay. I never fully bought into what is wrong with the collapse of the LSU defense. Just, you know, the formula was just flipped on its face this year, and I never bought into the fact that they were just all of a sudden woke up this year and were terrible. Just wasn't going to buy into it. But clearly, the committee looked at him and said, this defense is holding them back. And that defense took it personally and took it out on Texas A&M. Not to mention the fact that last year's game was plenty of motivation, plus the comments at SEC Media Day by their quarterback. So, I mean, good luck to Texas A&M. I mean, that was a great effort, a great game. I just got to say this. What an incredible year for LSU. I mean, it really says something to me when every prominent LSU alumni that's in sports media, Ryan Clark, Booger, McFarland, Marcus Spears, Shaq, they're wearing it with pride. There's just something about that place when LSU was vibing. If you went there, you understand, like, the connection. There's nothing like it. And there's no feeling like it. And when I see those guys constantly, you know, just talking about them and just the pride that they have, like I'm here with them. I get it. It's been such a great year. And Joe Burrow has been such a phenomenal face of that team. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. I've never pulled for a head coach to succeed more than I've pulled for Ed Orgeron to succeed. And he's getting everything he deserves.
Right. Undefeated, 12-0 season. I don't know how many people saw that coming. But you mentioned him. Before we talk about the offense, let's talk about the legend of Joe Burrow. First of all, coming out of the tunnel with the EAUX on the back of his jersey, realizing what that means to Louisiana and getting it. That's the thing, you know, this is an Ohio kid, getting it.
He got it. And I work in television, so we hire a lot of transplants, and I've sat with coworkers that they have that look in their eye. They just don't understand this place. They just not just New Orleans, but Southeast Louisiana. They just don't get it. It's not an easy place to get. No. It's not. And I don't think Burrow probably got it right when he got here. He was just a football guy from Ohio. And as the years went on, And as the season went on, and I'm reading these articles, great articles. The coverage has been phenomenal by LSU this year. How that I think what really hit him was the fans at the airport at the Alabama game.
Yes.
And to understand that connection, and understand and embrace it, and to do the Burrow moment was just, it really was incredible. And he timed it perfectly. He didn't tell anybody.
Right.
He caught everybody off guard with it, and it was just like, yes, we're wrapping our arms around you. You are ours. Yes. I am yours. This kind of was his way of saying it. I just thought it was a phenomenal moment, and it was so genuine.
Yeah.
You cannot fake that. It was so genuine.
It was.
And I read a quote, something about him telling it was either his mom or his girlfriend or something, are you sad? He said, no, I'm not sad. I'm just really going to miss this place. And everybody that's ever gone through LSU understands what that means.
Talking about the legend of Joe Burrow again, and I've heard this all week long. I agree with it, and I want to get your take. In the same breath now is Cannon, Casanova, Maravich, Pettit, Shaq, Ben McDonald. You talk about some of the greats in the sports in the history of LSU men's athletics. He's right there now, right? And when he took that Heisman Trophy, which I believe he'll get, and I'll ask you that in a moment, you can actually answer it now. I mean, I think that just solidifies it at that point.
100%. He's on the Rushmore. He's
right.
on the Rushmore.
He is, isn't he though?
And he's a Midwestern kid from Ohio.
2 years at LSU.
Played here 2 years. It just goes to show you, doesn't matter how you got to LSU, it's what you do when you get there. And I just think, he is on that Mount Rushmore of LSU athletes. And again, he embraced it. It didn't burden him. It just opened his eyes to the culture, and he took it all in, and he just kind of put his arms around it. And that's not always easy when that attention comes. And you're not really sure what you're doing, and you can get kind of standoffish. And he let his guard down and really just let it all out. And it really was a phenomenal just road.
Johnny Unitas Award winner. Again, there's a bunch of different awards going to be on the shelf. I think he's the Heisman Trophy winner. A lot of those votes have already gotten in. What do you think?
Who's his competition?
There is no competition.
I'm trying to figure out who could realistically make a claim at that.
And then I say that in one breath, and then in the next breath I say, well, the College Football Committee has them number 2, and you look at the body of work and you say to yourself, how can that be? No, I don't think there's any way at this point this year, the way it is, and it can be anybody but Burrow.
Look, love Chase Young, going to be a great pro.
Yes.
Their quarterback, great quarterback.
Yes.
But come on, there has been no one better in college football this year. Chase Young, I think, was pretty. I don't know if he dominated in that Michigan game. He had plays here and there, but he was pretty much shut down. Really. So the consistency, the clutch nature, the big plays, the transformation of the offense, the improvement, and every single time you needed him to answer, he answered, and then some. So to me. Look, you never know what voters in the Midwest and the West Coast are going to do, but shame on them if Joe Burrow was not the Heisman Trophy winner.
I would agree. I want to talk about Georgia in a moment. Let's talk about the college football poll. LSU number 2, Ohio State number 1, Clemson number 3, Georgia number 4, Utah number 5, Oklahoma number 6. Tough road for LSU even again now. You're going into hostile territory. You're going into Atlanta, Georgia to play Georgia, okay? And you look at this schedule, from Texas, the second game of the season, to, again, Auburn, Florida, having to go to Tuscaloosa. This has been a tough road for LSU, and they've come out of it unscathed thus far.
Best resume in the country.
I don't know how the committee can look at this and again, an honest depiction of what's going on this season when you look at the resume and say that Ohio State deserves to be number 1. Now, these teams could be evenly matched, but based on the schedule and what they've done, LSU's the best team in the nation.
That might be the best resume in the history of college football playoff.
I'm telling you.
When you consider where they've had to go, who they've had to play, when they've had to play them, and I'm not a big fan of, the Texas win doesn't look as good now. That was the premier matchup in college football.
All these games have to be looked at in a vacuum.
The Auburn game, the Alabama game, the Florida game. That was a premier matchups, and they've answered the bell every single time. So. Is what it is. Didn't think they were gonna switch places. I think the only scenario where they do switch places is if Ohio State looks ugly and LSU just runs the table and just wipes the floor with Georgia. If it's they beat Georgia by about 10, which is what I think is going to happen, and Ohio State's respectable victory over Wisconsin, it's not going to change. I think. So
you think they'll stay number 1?
I think the only chance they got is LSU wins big and Ohio State looks sloppy. That's the only way.
That's interesting because, and I almost feel like a little bit.
I think the default is Ohio State, unless LSU proves it.
Right.
I don't agree with that.
No,
I think that's the committee's.
Right.
That's what they're saying.
I mean, you mentioned it. Top 10 wins. Number 9, Texas. At Texas. Number 7, Florida. Number 9, Auburn. At number 3, Alabama. Okay? And you've won all those games. And now you're trying to sell Cincinnati to me as a quality win?
Right.
I mean, come on. You're trying to sell Cincinnati to me. I'll take any of these teams I just talked about, put them on the field with Cincinnati. They'd wipe the floor with them.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And who knows? I mean, and that's why, it almost feels like the criteria changes with each team.
Right.
With Ohio State, they're a complete team. But with LSU, it's like, well, the resume doesn't count as much because they're not as complete. Look, it is what it is at this point. There's nothing they can control. They go out, they win. It's it's good for us to talk about. But I think ultimately, LSU's at the point right now. Just point me where I got to play. Point me where I got to play. Tell me who I got to play against, and we're gonna go out there and we're gonna take care of business.
I watched a lot of college football this year, and I purposely tried to watch Big Ten games because it seems to be a Big Ten bias with this committee. I don't see it. I don't see where, when you look at the upper echelon of the SEC versus the upper echelon of the Big Ten, that the Big Ten is better than the SEC.
I mean, look, take Ohio State out the mix. I mean, I think Penn State would be a middle-of-the-road SEC team. I think Minnesota had kind of a hot streak. I think they'd be a middle-of-the-road. Wisconsin, same way. Last year this time we were talking about Clemson. I thought Clemson would be a dominant SEC team. That's just kind of last year this time.
That's right.
So that was my respect for them at that point. But when I look at the Big Ten, I don't see a single team inside the Big Ten outside of Ohio State that would regularly compete in the SEC.
I'd love to see the matchups of Florida, Auburn, and Alabama against one of these Big Ten teams, okay, and see what happens. Again, you may look at Alabama in one of these lesser bowls against a Big Ten team, and maybe they don't show up because they're so used to being a championship team. But I'm talking about when it still means something.
Right.
I just think there's been a little bit of a bias against the SEC in putting Ohio State number one.
You kind of sense that there's a group of national prominent voices that seem to have that. Whatever the case may be, they're going to kind of be anti-LSU, even if they don't mean to come across that way. I think Joel Klatt's one that kind of jumps out to me. Who I actually think does pretty good work on air, just in terms of his color analyst type work, but a couple other national voices like that. But is what it is. SEC is the most dominant conference in America, and in a year that's kind of been, you talk about LSU, Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and then the bottom half I think has been a little down, honestly.
Me too.
Year.
So that's why I said the upper
echelon. It hasn't been a banner year for the SEC other than the top half. But look. Like I said before, LSU's at the point right now, just look who we've played, look who we've beaten, point us in the direction where we got to play, and we'll go play.
Well, and Sean, to your point, it's like that every year with all conferences, though. Usually the SEC is pretty good all the way around. You got a few bottom feeders. This year it's down. The bottom half of that conference is down.
I've always given it the Mississippi State Ole Miss test.
Right.
Like if those teams are 6, 7, 8 wins, then you got a good year.
Okay, that's good.
I've always given it that because that's a good, solid middle of the road program. And if they're down, that's a good sign. That's probably a sign that the back half of the SEC is down.
And on the East, you can say South Carolina.
South Carolina's that team. Missouri, maybe.
Missouri,
that kind of thing.
Let's talk about LSU, Georgia. Break down this matchup for us.
Well, interesting matchup because you're gonna get a team that I don't think is gonna try to go shot for shot with LSU. I think their offense is built differently. They're gonna try to play ball control, try to play a little bit of keep away. Jake Fromm's taken a lot of flack over this year. These guys played a lot of football. I actually respect him, but he's not an explosive quarterback. I think he can make a few throws here and there, but he's at his best when he's making decent decisions and they're running the football. So if you're LSU, it's stop the run. Stop the run and stop the run because I just don't think Jake Fromm's going to take over a game. Offensively, you're dealing with a very good Georgia defense who I think has the capability to slow them down in spots. I just don't think they're going to be able to completely shut them down. So I actually think it is the LSU's defense because I think offensively, even if they get slowed down, they're not going to completely stop the juggernaut. So I think they can roll out of bed, score 35 points. Even against a very good defense. So if you're defensively, you got to kind of go with the mindset, we've got to stop the run, got to get off the field on third down. That's probably going to be huge in this game because third down conversions lead to longer drives, lead to longer time of possession against a team that wants to possess the football. So I think that's where the matchup lies, is can LSU's defense get off the field on third down against an efficient but not explosive Georgia offense.
You like the Tigers by 10?
Tigers by 10. like Georgia, like the way they're built, pretty close to being undefeated if you really think about it. They only had one slip up. LSU avoided the banana peel game. So I like LSU by 10. I think it's going to be close-ish. I think they pull away towards the end.
When you look at we look at just a little bit ahead, it'll be interesting to see, first of all, how these teams are seeded, and then if LSU is going to end up back in Atlanta or they're going to end up in Phoenix.
Well, I got to tell you, if they that'd be a tough, because Clemson is fairly close,
Yes.
right, regionally. And
Regionally, yes.
I think that would be, if LSU's the higher seed, I would think it would be the fairer thing to at least go to a different site. But in saying that, if they've advanced, they're going to play in New Orleans, which is basically going to be a home game.
And if you're if you're seeded number 1, you're going to take on the 4 seed. That's probably either going to be Oklahoma, Utah, or Baylor, depending on what happens this weekend.
Right.
That might be a situation where Atlanta's not a bad spot for you from a travel standpoint. But we'll see. We'll see. Look, Clemson is a really good team. I just don't think it's fair for LSU to see Clemson right out of the box, because then you're looking at, what a road you would have taken to get to the national championship.
And look, man, it's par for the course this season. Obviously, the challenges have been there. They've met every single one of them. But that Clemson team is just, because they weren't sexy at the beginning of the season, they've kind of slid under the radar for defending national champions.
Good.
Somehow, I've watched a good bit of their games, because I'm a Trevor Lawrence guy. I really think he's going to be number 1 overall pick in a couple of years, and he's played much better over the last. And they can run the football, and they got the number 1 defense in America. So, look, man, that's a tough opening matchup if they get to the college football playoff, which I think they will.
Let's go to Tulane. By the way, we want to thank our friends at the Campus Connection. We've got some more Tulane memorabilia here in the studio.
I got the Angry Wave.
Yeah, Jimmy, we got it for you. Okay, all those folks that were saying, where's the Tulane stuff? We got it for you. Thanks to our friends at Campus Connection for supplying us that stuff. Tulane 6-6, 3-5 now in the AAC. And look, the story of this season has been the story of this season. They haven't beaten a team with a winning record. They've lost 5 of their last 6. Also, the undisciplined play, the blown assignments, the penalties, the turnovers. It's been a week after week after week situation. This team is so much better than their record indicates, but they've shot themselves in the foot each and every week.
Yes, undisciplined play has been a problem. Penalties, drop passes in the end zone like I saw last weekend against SMU. I also think Justin McMillan is pretty much topped out as a player. I think we kind of know who he is at this point.
What's the situation with that, though? That's Banks and then McMillan, same type of situation.
Yeah, I just think, you are who you are as a player sometimes, and I think he improved as much as he could, and I just think this is who he is. He is a 6-6 American Conference quarterback. That's who he is, and that was from someone that was really high on him towards the beginning of the season, especially in that Houston game.
Right.
Look, they limped to the finish line. It's tough. As crazy as it sounds, I think it's a good thing that we're disappointed in this season, because that means the bar has been raised.
Yeah,
because there was a time we would take a 6-6 season
in a minute. Back-to-back bowl games. Are you kidding me?
So I think it's a good thing that we are critical of them. But they'll go to the bowl game. Hopefully they'll be successful in that bowl game. But regardless, you cannot look at this 2-year run, and if you look at the context of the entire history of Tulane football, and not at least be somewhat impressed with the fact that they were able to go 6-6, back-to-back bowl games. I mean, it's never been done in the school's history.
Let's talk a little bit about Willie Fritz. And rumored this week that he has already interviewed with Arkansas, that he's either interviewed or he's interviewing with Missouri. I was a little surprised to hear Missouri was his dream job after spending time at Central Missouri, being in that Hall of Fame. When he got to Tulane, one of the things that Tulane fans would ask me all the time is he going to stick around? Because Tulane has constantly been in a situation where coaches do well, they build the program, and then they're gone. It was your dad that said when we first started radio about 17 years ago, it's a good thing when other programs are coming to take Tulane's coaches, because that means Tulane is being successful. With Fritz, I thought being at 59 years old, and again, he'd be willing to stay. But then when you really think about it, he's the same age as Ed Ogeron. But again, when you start looking at it with coaches you're skewing younger and younger, is this an opportunity for him to be able to make a jump to a Power 5 conference? Now, I've also thrown it out there, and I'd like you to comment on this as well. that I think maybe the seat might get a little hot next year if ultimately he's not a guy that can take the next step with this team. Not that they're going to get rid of him because of what he's done in terms of turning the program around, but maybe a little bit warm, and maybe that's an agent putting it out there, trying to maybe take a little pressure off of him, maybe get the raise and such and such. I'd like to throw it out to you. What are your thoughts about Arkansas? What are your thoughts about Missouri? What are your thoughts about maybe the agent involved in this as well?
Okay, let y'all in on a little secret. When you read a report about a coaching search, a couple things you got to remember. What did you see in that report? You saw one coach, two schools.
Right.
Okay. That reporter got that from Willie Fritz's camp. Mm-hmm. Okay. He didn't call both schools and ask about Willie Fritz. He got that from Willie Fritz's camp. That's his dream job quote. Okay. Tulane's not feeding him that. Missouri's not feeding him that. That is coming from the Willie Fritz camp. Willie Fritz understands that right now I'm as marketable as I've ever been. I've done something at Tulane that's never been done.
22 and 27.
And he's won everywhere he's gone. I really respect him. I think because he has been at the bottom of the industry with him. You talk about some of the stuff he's had to do as a head coach in the lower rings of college football. So I think this is him creating them. First off, he understands that he has an interest at going to a bigger school. Mm-hmm. That's it. Right. I mean, he wouldn't be taking an interview. He wouldn't be answering the phone if it wasn't. He would have come right out and said, "There's no truth to this at all." Mm-hmm. Now, does he go there? That's the other scenario. Because I read a report today from FootballScoop.com that the Missouri search has gone sideways because they felt like the names that were in that report. I think Skip Holtz was even one of them.
Yes, he was.
Are not big enough for an SEC school. So if they pivot sideways, who knows what happens with Willie Fritz? Arkansas, supposedly talk with them. We'll see where that leads to. Sounded like Missouri was the one he wanted.
Yes.
Excuse me, but I think what I've learned throughout this is Willie Fritz was definitely interested in ascending the coaching ranks, and this was not going to be his final stop if another opportunity presented itself. And that's just the reality of the situation. He's not a lifer, but I think when it's all said and done, the smoke finally clears. Because I saw a report, Lane Kiffin's on Arkansas and Ole Miss's radar. It's a bigger name maybe, but I just think when all this dust settles, I'm leaning towards Willie Fritz being at Tulane next year. I'm not sure about the hot seat yet. Because look, he made history.
I mean, warm.
He made history.
Not hot. Warm.
I understand the way it closed out. It was bad.
Right.
But I still think you can't look at the Willie Fritz era and not think.
No,
success.
They want to keep him. There's no doubt. I'm just saying, you get in the situation next year, you don't have McMillan, you got an unknown at quarterback, maybe you're not as successful, maybe that seat gets a little bit warm. The other question before we go to the phone lines I want to ask is it easier to build a program at Tulane in the AAC and win than it is at either Missouri or Arkansas when you're talking about the SEC? Arkansas and the SEC West having to go through Alabama, Auburn, and LSU, and then of course Missouri having to go through South Carolina. Florida and Georgia.
Define success. Both places, you're not really required to win a national championship. I think Missouri can be an Auburn of the East. I think they can be a consistent, knock on the door every few years type of program. I think Arkansas, Petrino did it. Houston Nutt did it. I think it can be done. It's a gauntlet in an SEC West. But is it easier to build a program? I would probably say of those two, it's probably a little easier at Missouri just because the road is a little bit, maybe a little clearer, maybe a little smoother. But I just think at the end of the day, he's got interest. He's got interest. His name is out there.
Yep.
He has genuine interest after 4 years at Tulane.
We want to say this before we go to the phone lines. Congratulations once again to Southeastern over Villanova. They played number 8 Montana this week. Congratulations to Nichols. They beat North Dakota. They'll be now going against number 1 ranked North Dakota State this week in the FCS.
Both those schools really were impressive this year, and I've had a keen interest in the Southland this year. So good luck to both schools. 2 incredible opening round victories, and hey man, let it rip. Just let it rip. Nothing to lose. Playing with house money. Let it rip.
All right, Toby is up first. Toby and Metairie. Toby, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Toby.
Hey, Eric. Whatever happened to the Landry Walker, Mississippi State quarterback Thompson? And I thank you.
Right. Stayed at Mississippi State.
He was in the portal.
Right.
Came back to Mississippi State.
Right.
They they played a true freshman, so I would imagine he's going to be back in the portal and looking elsewhere. I liked him when he was at Landry Walker. I thought he was a really good player. I mean, there was a point in time where I thought LSU was going to get in on him. It didn't ever actually happen.
Right.
Went to Mississippi State. Looked like he was on a trajectory to be the starter after Fitzgerald. New coaches come in. A guy that didn't recruit him. It happens. Would be a bad player for Willie Fritz's Tulane Green Wave to take a call to give a call to.
And I think that's something that's going to happen too. I think they're going to go after a grad transfer. Tom is in Metairie. Hey Tom, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey guys, we're having a great year, 12-0. Do you think Coach O will be Coach of the Year? And do you have any updates on Joe Brady and also an update on Divinity? They said he's not going to play, but do you think he'll play at all the rest of the season if we make it through the playoffs?
Okay.
I'll hang up and listen.
Brady?
Divinity, according to Orgeron, he would be eligible to play if they made it to the national championship game.
Right.
Joe Brady, I am not worried about that at all.
No.
The only thing I would worry about is a Power 5 head coaching offer, which would come from out of left field. And the other thing that would worry me a little bit, I don't think it happens this year, is an NFL coordinator job. Because I think he's going to be more attractive to NFL teams than perhaps people realize. I mean, those would be the only two scenarios that I would worry about. He's going to be very well compensated at the end of this year. I think that deal's coming, if not already signed.
I think it's already together. Based on Coach O, on the Garland Gillen question to him at his press conference on Monday, where he gave that look into the camera, which was kind of scary, I got to be honest with you. Yeah. No doubt. As far as Coach O, I think he's going to be on everybody's list to be Coach of the Year.
Look, he's been unbelievable, and it's a little bit of redemption for him. And I just think a lot of the people that kind of danced on his grave a little bit after Ole Miss. I mean, it's a good 180 for everybody because I think he's the Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jeffrey's on the West Bank. Jeffrey, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Jeffrey.
Hey, how you doing?
Great.
Well, I have an issue with with something you brought up earlier about the Big Ten bias.
Okay.
And really, there's a bias against the SEC from what I think this whole playoff thing was created because the SEC became dominant, and teams like Michigan and Ohio State were left out. But I don't think we're raising our voice up enough because I think there's going to be. I would hate to see LSU lose because I think they're going to take. I think if LSU lose, they're not going to allow two SEC teams in.
Right. Thank you for the phone call. I think the metrics show if they lose, they're in still.
I still think they're in. It would have to be a collapse.
Right.
And I just don't see that happening for them to not be in.
But I do think there is a little bit of a bias right now. And look, I think that this has proven this year more than ever that you need to expand this to at least 8 teams. Okay? That a lot of this conjecture, a lot of what we're talking about right now will go right out the window if ultimately this was an 8-team playoff. Look, I'd love to see a 16-team playoff. I don't think I'll ever see that in my lifetime. But I think an 8-team playoff is something that we should see.
I would love 16 and just do away with the conference championship game because it just feels like sometimes it does more harm than good.
It's true.
But look, I think this committee, for whatever reason, has leaned towards, when it comes to the benefit of the doubt, it being Ohio State. And all things being equal, that's where the arrow is turning. So I maybe, just the mentality that just when you cover a sport or whatever, it's just that's out of everyone's control. And wherever LSU, I think there's an acceptance that if they're 2 right now, and let's do something major in the conference championship weekend, they're going to stay at 2.
Yeah. Let's shift. By the way, I wanted to ask you before we finish up with Tulane. You think Willie Fritz stays, or you think he goes?
I'm going to say when the dust settles, I think he stays.
So do I.
I think his name's out there. I just don't think he's quite the name everyone is looking for.
I think if it was 27 and 22 and 10, 22 and 27, I think
he's done some great things here, but I still think there's a little more work that can be done.
I think it's a hard sell to the alumni of any SEC school. You're bringing in a coach that had a losing record at Tulane.
And I think there's a little more here. There's a little more meat on the bone here that he can take a bite out of.
Talk about the Pelicans in the last part of this show, 6-15. Look, I've ripped
Do
on
we have
this
to?
week. Look, I was one. Again, I had to apologize to everybody on the radio show. I apologize to the audience here on the television show as well. I was one of the ones waving the pom-poms, okay? I really believe, looking at this roster, based on what they've done, that they could vie for the 8th seed. Obviously, injuries have been a factor here, but it's more than injuries, Sean. This team doesn't come to play every night. They don't give the effort and energy that you need to be able to win in the NBA. They don't play 4 quarters. They don't play defense. And at some point, look, I know defense is not something that is being played in the NBA, but at some point you got to play a semblance of defense, and they are not a physical team. They would rather sit out and chuck threes than be able to go in and to be able to attack the boards. When they are a team that attacks the boards, that plays in the paint, they are a much better team than a team that sits out there and takes the first 3-point shot. I am highly disappointed in what has happened thus far.
Yeah, even the scenario with Zion, I would have thought after the first quarter of the season they would have had more than 6 wins. I thought realistically around 500 would be somewhat acceptable given the circumstances. And look, first couple games of the season, they came out and played hard.
They did.
They looked good in those games. We just kind of felt
they played hard against Los Angeles.
They did. They've played hard, and it just kind of felt like, all right, as soon as Gentry figures this rotation out, they'll be fine. Injuries are there. That happens. You got to adjust. You got to slide. I just kind of feel like when I watch this team, it's a sporadic group of athletes where if you put each athlete, he's pretty good at this, pretty good. They haven't figured out a way to blend it together and form an identity. It almost feels like they've reached a point where, okay, counting the days for Zion here. Let's get waiting for Zion to come save them. That way we can be who we want to be. I just think it's the wrong message. I think it's the wrong. It's just think it's the wrong vibe. It's the wrong. And I just think you're at, for as much as you say this is Drew's team, if that's kind of the feel you get, I just think it's the wrong approach to take. It really has been disappointing over the last couple of weeks. I watched that Laker game. They really played well.
They did.
But since then,
no,
it has not been
losing
good.
2 to Oklahoma City, not showing up the other night. I mean, it's just it's really been disheartening to watch because there is potential with this team, but it's not a team right now. It's a bunch of guys wearing the same jersey, and I don't know if they're playing for each other. Rules have not been defined. Now, look, injuries have something to do with it. When you lose your center, when you lose your number 1 rookie, who, again, is supposed to be a mainstay for you, that's going to hurt you. Every player on this team has either missed a game due to injury or did not play because of coach's decision. But Gentry has to be held accountable here, and I'm going to say David Griffin also needs to be held accountable here. David Griffin was everywhere, again, touting what this team was going to be. He set the bar. He's the one that got everybody excited about this team. He has been behind the curtain. We can't find him right now.
And he was a guy, I was struck at the tone he always set because it just felt like, wow, he's out in front.
Yes.
Whereas the Dell Demps era was always kind of, he wasn't very charismatic in front of the camera and always kind of felt like there was backdoor dealing going on, whereas David Griffin was kind of out in front. This is what we're doing. This is our goals, clear cut. 6 and 15, and all of a sudden it's hard to come out there and have that same confidence, and he's kind of been MIA a little bit. So, look, it's a disappointing start. There's no doubt about it. At some point, though, there has to be an acknowledgement of this is not we are not on track for what we wanted to do. Yes. And there has to be some acknowledgement from someone in the front office. And
not just the acknowledgement, there has to be some action here as well. If this was a group of assets that you brought in, and again, assets being players, and you threw this group together, but it was always about trying to be able to build this thing over the next 3 to 4 years to try to win a championship. Well, this group is not working together. So again, December 15th, the training will begin in the NBA. There has to be a move here that if guys don't want to be here, that ultimately they're going to have to be moved elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's always on the table, and certainly at no point did you go into this season feeling like this is, if they ever make a run to a championship, this is the team it's going to be. At some point, moves were coming. Moves were going to have to be made at some point during this tenure here over the next year and a half. I guess maybe a little sooner now than we thought, but all options are on the table. And look, Drew Holiday, he wanted this.
Right.
He wanted this. And he has not played like the face of the franchise.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Sean was in Fox 8 Sports. Always a pleasure having you on the program.
Thanks, bud.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. You can also catch us on Pelican Sports Television, 9 o'clock every Friday night. Catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, the iHeartRadio app. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com, All the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. I want to thank our underwriters. Thanks so much for the underwriters for supporting our program. Also the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Naylor Jones, Alex Chacon, and my director, William Hill. Thanks to Sean Fazan. I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.